Is the bull market over? It's a question that so many people are asking. People are getting absolutely crazy on the timelines. They're either bored out of their minds due to time capitulation or obviously price capitulation, which in theory hasn't actually gone down that far compared to history. But ultimately, guys, a lot of people are fearful out there. So what I thought I'd do in today's video is take a real analytical approach with Bitcoin price analysis. We'll compare previous percentages and statistics with previous halvings and previous price action. Now, ultimately, price doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. So there's lessons in that to essentially work out what we should be expecting with price action moving into the end of 2025 and into the start of 2026. So if you love my content, please subscribe down below. Smash the like button as well, guys, because it does go a long way for the channel. And obviously turn on notifications so you stay up to date with my crypto videos in this space. And obviously, if you'd like to support the YouTube channel just a little bit further, become a YouTube member and get early access to these videos. Here's a video. That's right, guys. We're going to look at a macro time perspective. I'm then going to dive into stochastic momentum. So in other words, look at where potentially price could go or how long it might take for price to get to certain areas. We'll look at statistics based on previous halvings, previous markets, so bull cycles and bear cycles, and really step back and take an analytical approach to what's currently happening. Now, there's obviously a lot of fear out there. A lot of people are getting bored due to time capitulation. Meme coins are essentially saturated. NFTs aren't doing anything. People aren't using the DeFi. Multiple chains are being used. So ultimately what we want to be knowing is the bull market over or is it here to stay? And this is potentially a really good accumulation point. So without further ado, we'll dive into it. Now, obviously, this indicator here is just a Pi cycle Bitcoin high and low indicator, and it has been a really good test for previous price action in the past. So essentially, it just uses different moving averages to track where price potentially could hit, ultimately with a new all-time high, and obviously potentially lows during the macro bear cycles. And obviously, the yellow and the green moving averages are traditionally areas that price likes to respect or obviously reject from when trending throughout the bull and the bear market cycle. So in other words, let's just take a look at what previous cycles have done. So as you can see here, we often do hit the top of or outside the top of the leading white moving average. And ultimately during bear markets, guys, with the COVID dip and obviously in the previous dip last cycle, okay, we do sometimes go below the lowest trending moving average, which is this red one over here. So as you can see, during last cycle's bull bear market, as you can see, we definitely spent a lot of time underneath that level and then have since obviously reaccumulated and then been trending up ever since. And now ultimately, guys, we really haven't had a massive pullback in time. Look at this. That's like two years nearly, guys, since this time in January 2023. So obviously, in my opinion, because we obviously have set a new all-time high as well, I do think that price needs to consolidate for a lot longer. So obviously, Greeny, let's have a look at it and take some analytical perspective. So I've broken it down just to make it super easy for you guys to track, but ultimately this is what we're looking at. So I've used the analysis obviously of the halving here, guys, and previous price action. This is actually the index. So in other words, this is Bitcoin's full price history. So obviously if we come back all the way to 2011, you can actually get price down here with the first halvings and price as well. So I've used this indicator and this chart to ultimately do some analysis to see where we currently are and whether that is actually a time to be worried or a time to maybe think that this is the best opportunity that we have seen since about September last year. So ultimately, let's have a look at the stats. So the first thing too, just to note, the first halving, obviously, or the first sort of macro cycle, I'm going to exclude it as an outlier, even though I have included both averages for all of these statistics. The reason for that is obviously Bitcoin wasn't really an established asset. It wasn't an asset class yet with a super reputable like market cap, but also a super reputation in general. So I do hesitate with including the first halving and first bull cycle, bear cycle, price action, but obviously I will include it because it keeps the analysis nice and accurate. So without further ado, let's dive in. So the first one here, guys, is halving to new all-time highs. So how many days does it take for Bitcoin to reach its halving and then reach a new all-time high? So in theory, the first cycle saw 91 days. The second and the third cycle took 200 plus days, guys. Okay, so that's a long time. That's 7+ months of price action post halving before a new all-time high. And ultimately, as you can see here, we currently are at day 133 in this current bull cycle. So ultimately, the average, excluding obviously the outlier, is 217 days, but obviously including it is 182 days. So in theory, guys, you could roughly say that we still have an average of about 200 days due for an all-time high post-halving, which leaves us with about 70 days left before we do reach that average, which would put us at around 2 and a little bit more months of price action before we obviously maybe attempt a new all-time high. All right, let's dive a little bit deeper. When the higher highs post-halving. So in other words, when does Bitcoin make a higher high post-halving? So as you can see, this is the previous all-time high from 2013, sorry. And as you can see, it didn't make a higher high until this point here. So that's what I mean by higher high. It is closing above the previous all-time high. So let's have a look at it again. So higher highs post-halving. So 56 days for the first halving, 164 days for the second, and third was 78 days. Now, ultimately, guys, we are on the extension of that range, hitting 133 days so far. And again, this cycle is a lot different, which I have put over here because we obviously reached a new all-time high before the halving, which is in history the first time ever. So again, perhaps maybe this one, a higher high post halving, might be the first time in Bitcoin's history that we might delay this really quite a long time. So as you can see, this one, halving number 2, saw another sort of month from where we currently are compared to this one up here, which is obviously another 2 months. So, okay, keep those dates in mind. So a month from here would obviously be the start of October, and 2 and a little bit months would obviously put us into the middle of November using these two alone. Now, ultimately, Bitcoin does dump post-halvings. Now, really interestingly, these stats are quite similar. Obviously, the second halving was quite an outlier in itself there because it dumped 31%. But what I wanted to actually show you from this halving is actually what happened to price when we did hit a all-time high. So as you can see, the halving, we had an all-time high pre-halving. Now, obviously, first time in history that's happened. We dumped, like literally the day after the halving occurred, we dumped down to here, but we immediately bought back up and re-attempted to break an all-time high. However, due to that, as you can see, we never had a closure above this high over here. So in theory, it hasn't made a higher high yet. We have obviously since then seen a dramatic amount of lower highs, guys, on multiple time frames, and obviously lower lows, but more analysis on that very shortly. Let's continue with the statistics. So in theory, it's always good to just see where the price is doing the same thing as what it has in the past, and ultimately that is pretty consistent data there for post-halving dumps. Now, this one here, post-halving to peak. So this is post-halving, so halving date to the all-time high peak of the previous cycles. Now, ultimately, again, I have excluded and included the first halving to just sort of work out whether Bitcoin was a mature asset or not, those types of things. And as you can see here, we had an average of 538 days, excluding the first cycle, as you can see there. And ultimately, if you do include the first cycle, then we saw an average of 482 days since the bull cycle ends. So in theory, we are very much still early days before we do potentially see an all-time high. And again, I just have to reiterate this point here. The fact that we made a new all-time high pre-halving really shows me that consolidation now could take even longer than previous times. This one here, obviously higher highs. This one here, halving to new all-time highs. It wouldn't surprise me if Bitcoin gets up into this 200-day mark, if not longer, or this one here even sets a new all-time high for the longest time period that it does take to make a higher high post-halving, because we obviously front-run it a lot with institutional wealth, with the ETFs and the demand there. So for me, guys, I just stay so extremely patient with this analysis involved. So obviously, a lot of people want to know, Greeny, what's happening in the charts currently? And as we can see currently, guys, this is on an hourly, so it's very zoomed in. And again, I'll use the stochastic momentum above just to see where price, in my opinion, is going in the short term. But ultimately, I'm still very curious. This level here, the low 57, 57 sort of region is a critical level of the mid-range, guys. And again, I'll show you this with a little bit less on the screen, so it makes it a little bit easier. I currently think that price is actually in a sort of range. This red new box is our range. These being the top, this liquidation event that we saw obviously at the start of August being the bottom, and this being the mid level here. So for me, this is a massive level that I would like to either take some swing longs if we retest it, or obviously if we break down, some swing shorts. Now, price is currently pumping into this. Again, for me to be bullish from here, I would love to see it sort of sweep above this high here at the sort of 59.5k level, close a couple of hourly candles there, close a 4-hour candle there, close a daily candle there, and then perhaps we might even retest the top of this range up here at the 65k level. But obviously that's very hearsay because we currently are still pumping, and let's obviously look at some of the metrics as well to dive into it. So ultimately, that's on the hourly, which is very similar to what you would see a lot of other charts at the moment, guys, and we will look at stochastic momentum very shortly. But if we do take a look at this, essentially, we are still obviously at the bottom of this mid-range here. And I would love to see price sort of, if you are bullish, sort of break this trend, this descending sort of trend here that we've been forming. But ultimately, as I said, if it can break a higher high here, close above that 59k level, 59.3k level, then likely we could continue to the top of this range up here. Again, there's a lot of wicks up here that have a lot of liquidity where people have obviously shorted or longed. So again, maybe we are acting a little bit out of character, moving up towards this liquidity up here and then breaking down towards the bottom of this accumulation range. If we do take a look at the daily, again, it's going to be very similar. This is just a mini range within a macro bull wedge, and ultimately, or bull flag, sorry, you do have a bull flag here, guys. Price comes up, we rotate in and up, so shorting the tops, long in the bottom, shorting the tops, long in the bottom for a very long time. And like I just showed you in the statistics, this could last for a long time yet, guys, even into 2025 in the worst case scenario. But again, I'm still patient. I'll probably still be accumulating during this time because in my opinion, it is not over until we do potentially break down and create a new trend outside this current macro bull flag. This obviously is replicated on the weekly as well. So if we do dive out and take a look, okay, I will get rid of my drawings, but essentially, as you can see, we do obviously still have that sort of weekly bull flag playing out. And like I said before earlier in the video, we have not seen price really sort of consolidate for a long period of time since about this lows of the bear cycle, which is obviously at the end of 2022. So we're fast approaching nearly a 2-year bull run, you could call it, okay? So price consolidating here makes a lot of sense. Obviously, let's look at the stochastic momentum, guys. We'll start on the high time frames because it's always a good way to start, and then dive in a little bit lower. So if we do look at price with Bitcoin at the moment, we are very much in the overbought territory. The price still has a lot of ways to come down. Okay, the current pivot is obviously at 65.1. So again, it probably means that price still has a lot to potentially come before we do see it maybe flip bullish on the weekly and the monthly. Again, that's the monthly. So let's dive into the weekly. As you can see, the weekly has reset a lot better. Now, these obviously are higher time frames, so it does take time for these to play out. But I would, again, love to see sort of the DMI come down here and show me that we are maybe moving up in a trend. You want to see this stochastic momentum also come down a little bit further. As you can see, we're currently nearly at the pivot, 58.3K. We're actually nearly testing that to maybe show a little short-term pump here. But ultimately, guys, the trend is still very much towards the downside for a long period yet, at least for a couple of weeks before I would like to see this move up. Let's look at the daily because that's always interesting as well. From a short-term price action, we are maybe potentially bottoming, which might be a reason why we are pumping at the moment. And obviously the pivot is at 57.7, which we are well above $600 at the moment. So again, if this does, if Bitcoin does sort of close price action above this today, then likely we could see a little bit of a mini pump up towards that mid to low 60K region. I won't go too much lower, but let's go to 4 hours just to see what's happening there, guys. But ultimately, as you can see here, again, we have bottomed quite a little bit. So it is obviously expected so 56.4. So we are well above that. So maybe for the next sort of periods on the 4 hours, we could potentially see this move maybe move back up towards this liquidity in the 59K region. Now, ultimately, guys, I do stay bullish. I do not think the bull market is over. I do not think crypto is over. If anything, I'm aggressively accumulating if price does choose to move down to liquidity in the 40K region, or even obviously the 38 region. Okay, we do have a lot of liquidity down here in 33. Okay, we have liquidity down here at 38. We have a lot of stacked liquidity at 41K. So don't rule that out, and I don't rule that out, guys. And I'm not bearish until it obviously breaks this trend. And I do think that price could obviously go all the way deep into 2025 in this consolidation range before we do ultimately play out this massive bull flag that we are forming. So I hope that gives you sort of insight into where we currently are with the markets, some previous price action, some previous history, comparison with the halvings, and some statistics-based analysis. So if you would let me know in the comments down below if you like this style of video, I'll be sure to do more of these in the future. But ultimately, do you think the bull market is over? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thanks. So there you have it, guys. My opinion on the current market using an objective lens rather than being super emotional or subjective. If you like my content, subscribe down below. Smash the like button as well, because it generally does go a long way for the channel. And obviously, if you'd like to support the channel a little bit further, become a YouTube member and get early access to these videos. As always, guys, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.